All right, good afternoon. Notice I'm saying good afternoon and not good morning. When I started out today, Monday, July 31st, and I tried to connect to Teams, this is what happened. It came up and it said we ran into problems reconnecting, and it kept trying to reconnect, and eventually it would come up and say, sorry, we couldn't connect you. I did that probably a half dozen times for about 10 minutes, and then when I got done, I rebooted the system and it all seemed to work. That's all fine, right? Then I proceeded to lecture and I lectured for 3 hours and 40 minutes. All right. The problem is, oops, try that again. The problem with that is, as it says right here, your instructor must unhappily announce that today's video appears to be audio only. That is 3 hours and 40 minutes of audio only. So I'm going to retape today's lecture right now using Camtasia. I will put out a new associated URL later today. All of the URLs that were shown in here other than this one, which is, if you want to just listen, I guess it's now a podcast. All right. But the URLs that are in here, they all work. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start all over again right now. And to start with, as we usually do, I'm going to go over what we're going to do today. All right. So the first thing to tell you is several people emailed me over the weekend to tell me they were having problems with link worksheet number 3, problem 3. That was the one with the student grades. So I've decided to do the following two things. First, I've decided to change the due date for the chapters 17 through 19 written tests and the link worksheet to this Wednesday at midnight. Second, due to the problems people were having with number 3, I will do number 3 with you as a class on Wednesday. This will not be saved as a GitHub repository. Now, if you've already turned in your homework yesterday as it was scheduled to be turned in, and you're happy with it, then don't worry about it. But if you had problems, all right, even if you turned it in already and it was incomplete, maybe you didn't do number 3, well, then just upgrade your repo, because I'm not going to grade these till probably at least Thursday. Okay? All right. So today I'm going to finish going over the C# MySQL GUI app with you. Then when we get done, we'll talk a little SQL Server. And then we will create a simple SQL Server tester program using the Muroc MMA Books database. After that, we will go over one more time the requirements for the final project and the requirements for the ePortfolio. Then for the rest of this week, tomorrow I'm going to lecture on chapter 20 and do exercise 20-1. Wednesday I'm going to lecture on chapter 21 and do exercise 21-1. Also link lab 03 student grades. Thursday I will lecture on chapter 22 and do exercise 222-1 and if time 22-2. Now, none of this work in here, you don't have to do any of this. I'm going through the rest of the book for completeness. So this is your last homework for the class. The chapters 17 through 19 written tests and the link worksheet. In addition, 2 weeks from tomorrow, your final project will be due. 2 weeks from Wednesday, your ePortfolio will be due. All right, so let's just get started. I've got my working version here of the MySQL GUI app. And let's just do this. Let's bring up, because I shut it all down earlier. So let's bring up XAMPP, and I will bring up phpMyAdmin just to show you that right now, as this comes up, If I go to Acme widget and I go to my employee, all right, you can see what's in there. We have 10 records, plus I added 2 kind of junk records at the end. Why am I showing you that? At the end with Kent Benson and Mike Montana. All right. And let me stop that now. There, now I'm out of that. The reason I'm showing you that is if I run the program, what you will notice, cannot find column last name. Good golly, give me a break. All right, we have in here, okay, the same program, the same thing, basically. And there at the end is Kent Benson and Mike Montana. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to design mode here, and I'm going to widen this thing out. So let me unlock this, move this down even a little further. And now I'll move this down too. You won't see it as much on the screen, but when the program is run, of course, you will. So lock controls. Good. So now I think when we run this, because I made the data grid view bigger, there, now you can see everything. Okay? I don't know why it's giving me that error about for the last name. Of course, something would have to go wrong. All right. So let's take a look at this. So let me run it again. Again, I might get this thing. Cannot find column last underscore name. We'll have to look for that or look at that, even though it's in here. But I just want to show you that now. So if I take Mike Montana here, okay, and I make some changes to him, not to his ID, but I'm going to change this to Michael. And instead of Montana, let's give him a different state name. How about York from New York? And instead of 123 Main Street, let's make it 456 Tree Valley Lane. And instead of Chicago, let's make it Detroit, Michigan. I have no idea what their zip would be. All right. So you can see I've changed everything other than the employee ID. Everything else has been changed. All right. So if I do that and I click update, what you'll notice is it's now Michael York. All right, I wrote Mokel, so let's fix that. Doesn't like the change now, so let's see. Let's move off of it, move back onto it again. Try it again with Michael. Good gosh. When you get errors like this, it usually means that I've closed this thing prematurely someplace, or it wasn't closed and I attempted to reopen it. All right, so let's run this again. All right, bring up Mokel York and change it to Michael. Update. It's now Michael. All right, and let's take a look in here and look at all of our employees. And you'll notice it's Michael York, Tree Valley Lane, Detroit, Michigan, etc. So that is working. In other words, the update is working. The program is still a little problematic. I'm not going to lie there. All right, let's see if we can add a new person. All right, so let's come in here and let's clear. And let's add, I'm going to add my wife. So I'm going to make her 3344. Her name is Sandra. I'll just give her my work address. Okay, she's not in here right now. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 people. I am in here. I'm the only Scott that's in here. So let's click add. All right, and it does look as though she was added. Now this isn't clearing, which I thought it should, but now it's cleared. So let's go back again over here, and we will do a go. And you can see indeed she is in there. Okay, so add works as well. Again, I'm going to stop. There we go. So I've shown you add. I've shown you update. All right, let's get rid of Michael York. All right, there he is. I'm going to click delete. Are you sure you want to remove him? I'll say no. And of course I get an error. Not allowed to change the connection string property while this data is open. So again, you can tell there's some place I haven't closed it where I should have closed it. All right, and we'll go back and look at that in just a moment. But when I come back and run it again, and I go to Michael York, and I click delete, and I say yes, he's gone from here. And if I bring it up over here, there should be no more Michael York in here either, and you'll notice there's not. So all of that stuff is working. In addition, okay, in addition, when I go back to the program, if I go in here for the last name and type in SC, you'll notice that Jeff Scott and Sandra Scott are the only ones that are found. If I change that to just S, now it finds Carly Jones, Jeff Scott, Glenn Larson, Gene Smith, Joanne Johnson, Ken Benson, and Sandra Scott. All right, so all of that at least appears to be working. Okay, so let's take a few minutes and just talk about how that happened. I will tell you that the original presentation this morning was 3 hours and 40 minutes. This has happened before. Typically when it happens, the second presentation that I do is about half as long as the first is. All right. I don't know if it's because I'm just that miffed and it just happens to be that way or not. I really and truly don't know. Okay. But as the saying goes, it is what it is. So tired of being upset and whatever. Okay. So let me exit. And then let's take a look at this program. Okay. Now the first thing again is we had that error. We had an error with last name, and I don't know why that would be. But we also had a thing where it appeared as though when we should have closed our connection, we didn't. So let's take a look in here. You'll notice whenever we're uploading data, we're closing it. That's good. So when we attempt to add, even though I've got a finally in here with a close, I'm going to put another close in here. So I'm going to say con dot I don't know why it's doing that. It's SQL con dot close. I'm just going to be closing it all over the place, just so you know. Okay. All right. So there's one that's already closed there. Is valid data. I don't have to worry about it there. There's update. I'm already closing it there. Let's close it here as well. And there's delete. And it is being closed. Let's move down and close it again, even though it should already be closed. And we will close it here as well. All right. Now, there's no other place that I can think of where I've opened the connection that I now must close it. Okay. I think I've got everything covered there. I could be wrong. But taking this then from the top. All right. You're going to notice if you look at this that there are some more URLs in here now than were in here previously. Plus I tried to put a little bit more documentation in. Some of it was probably a necessary thing, that the department code must be between 1 and 7, and that the salary must be between 0 and 1 million. Okay? But these were our variables. You'll notice if I take my mouse and put it over here, you get a bunch of stuff that comes up. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just read this as far as what's in here. If you don't like to, if you want to look on your own, I've set up a bunch of URLs in here. You'll notice that they're all docs.devart. All right. And I tried using the actual MySQL website, dev.mysql.com. But when I looked up things and then I tried to click on that page to go to it, it came back with page not found. I have no idea why. All right. Let's see if it's still that way. So there's MySQL connection. And if I go out to dev.mysql.com, and in here I put a search, and I search MySQL connection, and I hit enter. Okay, there is like the MySQL object. When I click there, oh, now it is showing it. All right, when I did this the other day, of course, I wasn't getting any of this. So I am going to go back and I'm going to add both of these URLs in here. So if anything, I'd rather inundate you and give you way too much stuff than not give you enough. All right, so there's that. Let's see if we look at MySQL command, if we can find that. All right, SQL, MySQL data reader. Let's try just data reader and see if it finds anything. Nope. Oh, just grab this one. I don't know if that'll help or not, but like I said, when I tried doing this, I think it was Friday of last week, when I went back over to take a look at it, I was getting, excuse me, I was getting all sorts of page not founds. Okay. Let's try MySQL data adapter. Nope. And how about, let's try data table. And no on that too. Okay, that's fine. All right, but I do want you to understand what these things are. This is actually going to be our connection that we're making to the database. Okay, this will be the command that we're going to attempt to run against the database. So it'll be the select or the update or the delete or the create or add type of thing, or insert type. It goes and takes whatever the result was from the command and it puts it into a data reader. All right. Then that's basically in kind of a databases base type of format to allow us to be able to communicate with our program. All right. That's where this data adapter comes in. Again, it's kind of a bridge between the data reader and the program. All right. And it puts it into the data table. So as we come in here and start, this is our connection. When I say this is our connection, these are the parameters we're going to use to connect to the database. So when we say server, the system says, oh, localhost. When we say username, the system says, oh, root. When we say password, the system says, oh, none. And database Acme widget. In addition, we've got two global variables that we use later when we're doing validation. One for the employee ID and one for the employee department code. We'll talk about those later. Okay? So we come in here in the load event, and the first thing we try to do is to clear to make sure that there's no junk in there to begin with. Okay, then we call upload data. And as it says, the goal of upload data is to fill up the data grid view. So let's quickly look at upload data here. It's right here. In fact, the whole thing is right here. All right. So the first thing we do is we set the connection string. We'll look at that in just a moment. All right. Then we open the connection. Okay. And then we basically set the commands connection to our SQL connection. Then we set the command text. So this is what's going to run whenever upload data is called, which says, show me everything. Show me everything that is in the employee table. All right. So this is a command text. I doubt if this will work, but let's try it anyway. No, that's okay. All right. All right. After we do this, this tells it to actually execute this command, and it puts the results into SQL Reader. From SQL Reader, we use that to load up a data table object. Now, we no longer need our reader to be open. We no longer need our connection to be open, so we close them both. And this says, set the data source for our data grid view to the results of select star from employee. So that's what this is doing. Now, up here, the first thing we had done was we called set connection string, and that's this. And again, this should make sense to everybody by now. Okay? That ends up, when this runs, it ends up creating this string, which is our connection string, that says server is localhost, UID for the username is equal to root, PWD for the password is equal to nothing, and the database is Acme widget. So that's what we've done in there thus far. All right. So let's look at the add routine. Again, we have looked at these and verified that mostly these work. Now, I like to know and be guaranteed that something like this is going to work 100% of the time. But as you've already seen, weird stuff can happen. All right. I'm giving you what I can give you here. So when we click the add button, we're going to call attempt to add record. When we call attempt to add record, this is what's going to come up. All right, it's going to run this routine. It'll first set the connection string. Then you'll notice, as oftentimes happens, you will, since you are working on databases, and databases can be quite finicky, quirky, whatever you want to call it, we put this into a try-catch block. And the first thing that we do is we come in here, and kind of redundant, but we want to validate the data. So for this is valid data, you'll notice that I brought in the validator class, which has got the is present and is decimal and is in 32 and an is within range. So I now have all of those available to me to my program. All right. So let's look at the is valid data. As it says in the comment, and I tried to comment fairly liberally in here, validate all 10 input fields are not empty, validate an employee ID, and a employee department code are both integer values, validate that the salary is between 0 and $1 million. That's going to use the methods from the validator.cs class. In addition, our own code will validate that 1, the employee ID is both numeric and positive, and the what was the other one? I'll look. That the department code is greater than or equal to 1 and it's less than or equal to 7. All right, that's all the stuff we're going to do in here. So this will require 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 checks in this routine. All right, the first 10 should be pretty obvious. It's just checking for the presence or absence of a value in the ID field, in the first name field, in the last name field, in the address field, in the city field, in the state field, in the zip code field, in the phone number field, in the department code field, in the salary field. Then for the other 5, those are here. This will validate that what was entered in the ID was an integer. All right. This will validate rather that whatever was entered for the department code is an integer. This will validate that whatever was entered for the salary, all right, is a decimal. And then finally, this will validate that whatever was entered for the ID is not negative or 0 or negative. And this will validate that whatever was entered for the department code was between 1 and 7. Now, could this be improved? The answer is, of course. Whenever you write any program, it can always be improved. Now, one thing, if I tried putting in something for the state, and I didn't try doing this, but if I try to put in something that's greater than 2 characters, it may poop out when I try to save it. But the other thing I could do with that is I could grab my whole list of states. All right, and I think later, not in this one, but no, I think we've got all 50 states and that's it. So we could basically check to make sure it was one of those 50 states. How would I do that? I would put the states into a list. Okay, I would put the 50 states into a list. And then I would do some kind of a validate that it contains one of those. Okay, we didn't do that. Let's see. Let's see if we can do that. So the bad thing is this is probably going to show us the state name and the abbreviation. And all I really want in here is the abbreviation. See that? I don't know if it'll let me come in here and just take this. See that? That's what I want, is just that middle column. Now, is it possible to bring that up? I'm sure it is. See, state and abbreviations. Well, now this one looks like it's taking it. That's good. So let's copy that to the clipboard. Come up here and do this. Now we've got half of them. Good. Let's do it again. No, wrong one. And bring that in here again. Good. All right. Now, what I should have done, didn't do, but it's okay, is I should have made sure at the beginning of this that we put a double quote in there, because these are going to be strings. So let's try to do that. I know this is boring, as you got to watch me do this if you are watching. Let's just do both of them, I guess. Let's put all these in first. All right, just about finished. All right, so let's come in here and up near the top, I'm just going to make this global. Okay. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say global state list. Now I want to say list let's see, it'll be a list of type string. It'll be called states, and it'll be equal to new list of type string, like that. Oops. I think we can now, whoops, believe we can now come in and initialize it. Let me just throw that in there, okay? And I know I don't have the using statement, so we'll put that in. So there we go. We didn't close this. Like that. Oops, try that again. There. So I put in all 50 states in here. Let me move these over. It looks terrible right now. All right, so I now have all 50 states. Okay, and there's my start. I'll move my end over to so they match. All right, and I think that that's the correct syntax. We're going to know soon enough. All right. So let's come down here now where we're measuring all this other stuff. This is where we're doing the validation. I'm going to also attempt in here. Let's see, we got the salary. I'm going to attempt. We'll see if it works or not. Validate that the state inputted is in the list of states. Okay. All right. So those are all our is presents. And then we've got our is in 32. That is for the text, so it should be here. So validate that the value in the state text box is indeed in the list of states. Okay, so let's create another variable bool up on top. We'll call it is valid state, and I'm going to actually set it equal to false, like that. All right. So I'm going to come in here then, and where are we? There we go. And I'm going to say for each state in for each string state in states. All right. If, like I said, I'm doing this literally off the top of my head. If states dot contains state is valid state equal true. In fact, I don't want to do it like that. I want to say states dot to upper let's see, I did them in caps already. So if states dot contains state dot to upper, all right, then is valid state equal true. All right. If not is valid state, that means it looked through the whole thing and it didn't find one. Then I want to add to my error message and say you must enter a valid state abbreviation. Okay? All right. Now let me run this. There could be errors in here. I don't think there are, but you never know. I could have screwed up something syntactically. That I've got to find out. Cannot find column last name. That's ridiculous. So let's come in here and let's put in, let's bring me up. Let's change my state. I'm going to change it to CF for the state of confusion. And now I'm going to click update. And it did change it. That isn't good, because CF is not a valid state. So that does not appear as though it worked. Let's set that back again to Missouri and update it again, which gives us, of course, an error. Good gravy. Let me do this. Let me just stop the, we go over to clear and then try it again. Because it'll take it now. So when I update now and I put it back to Missouri and I update, good gosh almighty. Fine, I'll run it again and do it. See if we can get that back to Missouri now. All right, it's back to Missouri. That's good. All right, now a couple more things before we finish this thing up. Again, I'm going to try to add. So let me clear and let me try to add somebody. And I'm going to try to put in an invalid state and see if it takes it or it doesn't take it. All right, so this will be 2, 4, 6, 8. Bob. Try Bob again. Bob. Bland. 1, 2, 3. Main Avenue. He will be in St. Charles. But I'm going to put an invalid state in and see if it catches it. So I'll put BB 44444 333 444 5555. Code 7, the celery. See if it takes that. It took that and it did take the BB. So, which means that either I wrote this wrong or this is wrong. So let's look at that quickly. List containing all valid state abbreviations. Example. Okay, I need to use the add and I didn't. So let's go look at this. Static list, US state of states. Yeah, that should be okay then. Static state array. Okay. So all of these should be changed. And they should look, come on, like, come on already. All right, so this should be like states.add. I think. Well, that's the way it looked on here. All right, we'll get it. All right, list string states equal new list, boom, bracket, bracket. What doesn't it like then? I think I have to say static here. No, doesn't like like that either. Yeah, it shows it like this. They don't have an add in there. Like that. Okay. And then I'm coming down later. And I'm saying in here, for each state in states, if states to contain .state.toUpper is valid is true. If not, so we set it to false initially, is valid state. We can also, if we find it, we can break from here. So if it is valid, let's come in here and check, see if this is even getting hit. So I'll grab me again. I'm going to change this from Missouri. Let's just try Nevada, just to see. Okay, and I'm going to click Update. And it changed it. It doesn't look like this was even hit. It never stopped here. So which means that wasn't being validated. Well, one thing, looking at this, no, that is right. I think I called it txt state. It must have, because it'd give me an error otherwise. Okay, it's only calling validate when I'm attempting to add. I'm wondering what I'm calling when I'm attempting to do an update. See, it's just doing it. I'm never calling it on an update. There's an error on my part. If you look up above, we are only doing this stuff if the is valid passed. And I should be doing it the same way down here. When we did the update. Delete is nothing. That we don't have to worry about. But here, try this. So this should be, if is valid data, then we should be doing all this stuff. All right, now let's see if it catches anything. Now, the other thing I want to fix is I want to give you good code. I don't want to give you, pardon my French, but crap. But when I run this, it comes up right away and it says, error, cannot find column last name. Where the hell would that be from? It is filling it up though, which is weird, but it's giving me an error message. So what's happening when this first runs is it is coming up here and it is calling upload data. There is all of that. And then attempt select star from employee, which should be fine. And the last name isn't even, that's not even the last field. TXT last name. I want to go back and look everywhere I'm doing a query here. Update. That's got last name and last name, so that one should be okay. Where's the add? See, that's last name. Why is it telling me that it cannot find a last name? I'm not sure. Let's try this again, though. So, yeah, I've got to try to fix that. Never was doing that before. Of course it would do it now. All right, so let's come in here and let's see if now, if I try to change my state. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to change this to DD. And it took it. Son of a gun. Well, this is going to be DD now. And yeah, when I do anything, must be negative unless, yeah, okay. Let's come in and run it one more time. Yeah. And I'm going to fix that. But I do want to see if I do come in and add a new. It's allowing that to be added with even, so that isn't working. I'm going to leave it in there so you can try to figure it out for yourselves, but I must be doing something wrong. And if that would have worked, the other thing we should, think about this. I always say play computer. This we've already covered because it has to be present and it has to be positive. All right. We could go in and check and see if it was already in there. We're not doing that, but we could. This we just check if it's there or not. Same with this, same with this, same with this. We just added in here that. We could check to make sure that the zip code was numeric, but it's set up as a string field. The phone, again, we could go in there and we could put in some regular expression handling if we wanted to or needed to do that. This must be between 1 and 7, between 0 and 1,000,000. So I'm very disappointed, but just, so you know, let's just go through the whole thing here. Again, I'm gonna grab that error. And when I get done today, I'm going to see if I can figure out what's causing that. So I've now got that error. Cannot find column last name. Very strange. All right. But it does come up and it does show me everything like this. Okay. And I have shown you that I could add a record. I could update a record. I could delete a record. All right. So very quickly, just taking a fast look at this. All right. So I already went through these checks with you, and I added my own check in here for the state. Evidently, it didn't like this. All right. So if states, which was my list, if it contains that state to upper, and mine is already in uppercase, so if it does contain it, I set is valid state to true, and I broke out, which would get me down to here. Otherwise, if I get all the way through and it doesn't find it, it should still be false. But for whatever reason, all right, and I can go and do a file save all, but that isn't going to fix it, I don't think. All right, so those are my checks. And again, I added one that does not appear to be working. For updating, we come in here and we've got this is valid data. All right. And again, we're trying to do that. We're trying to validate. So if it validates, that should again be checking everything that I put in there. All right. But it does not appear that that is actually happening. Can we open the connection? Maybe we should be opening the connection first. I don't know. Like that. So if it's valid, we set the connection, we run the command, we set the command type, we set up all the parameters, we execute. It's a non-query because it's not returning anything other than possibly a number saying that that it succeeded. We close the connection and we upload our list again. Otherwise, we just give an error. Okay. All right. In our delete, we come in, we again open the connection. Doesn't seem to matter if I put it in there. Like I said, the last time I moved it up there, but the delete's working fine. I did add this to basically say, are you sure you want to do that? And if you do, okay, I'm adding a parameter. So I'm letting it know that in here, when I refer to @employee ID, it means the text box for the ID. And delete from employees, you better put the where in there. I did not put the where in originally when I did mine on the update, and I changed everybody's information other than their employee ID. It was all mine. That was silly. Again, execute the non-query and close. All right. This removes it here from the data grid. This is removing it from the database. Okay. Our clear, we already saw this. This was a shortcut to being able to do a clear. All right, so it's going through all the controls. If it finds that the current control it's looping through is a text box, it clears anything out of it that's in there. That'll clear the 10 text boxes, and this is the other one, the 11th for our search. And our exit employee, there's nothing new there. Our cell click, this again right here is making sure that when we click on a cell that it is filling up the associated text boxes. And finally, this is our search routine. Notice it's in the search text changed. So every time I enter or remove a character, it's basically rerunning this query. Finally, we've got a show message. All right, you can see this is really big. It's 565 lines. I am going to look at that one at the end just to see if I can figure out what the heck the problems are. But that's pretty much what I wanted to show you in here. Okay. All right. Now I do have a working version, two working versions, because I've created it originally and then I created it again this morning. for SQL Server. But for now, let's just take this. I'm going to do a File, Save All, and I'm going to exit from here. All right, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to also close this. So close. I'm going to close. Interesting. So I'll close it from here. All right, now it's actually still open. See that? So if I click quit, sometimes you get an error when you do this. And see, I get an error. Sometimes I get 2 errors. It has to do with something that's in the initialization file for XAMPP, I believe. But just clicking it doesn't do anything. See that? It's not going to close it. Okay? So if you want to close it, if you ever get that error, do a Control-Alt-Delete, which brings up this blue screen. Choose Task Manager. Find XAMPP in your list here. Click on it and click on End Task, and then it's gone. Okay? All right. So let's create a new folder, and we're going to call it SQL Server Tester. That's it. Oh, I've already got an SQL Server Tester. This is the one I believe. Yeah, I know. It's not going to let me save that. I think this is the one I did before. So let's just change the name of this one. I'll call this SQL Server Tester X. Okay, and this will be then SQL Server Tester. Let's open in another program. Lovely. Let's close that. And okay, that should be okay. Let's see if we can do it now. Nope. All right, that's fine. I'm just going to call this SQL Server Tester 2. Fine. There's nothing in here. Okay, but let's talk for a minute about SQL Server. It's a different relational database management system than the one we've been using. It is Microsoft's relational database management system. Many people would argue that it's more terse. It's a little bit harder to work with than is MySQL. And I think Microsoft did it that way on purpose. They want to make sure that people who are using this have a clue as to what they're doing. Now, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to click the Windows Start button. And I'm going to go down to MySQL Server 2019. Now, mine's old. If you do yours, you're going to get 2022. All right? And the reason I'm showing you this is if I go down in here, if I click on this again and I go down to Visual Studio, you'll notice that there is a Visual Studio installer in there. And if I click on this, it brings up the installer. Not a surprise. And if I click on Modify, we did this on the first day of class. And I asked at that time, that you check 3 things. .NET Desktop Development, that's for this class. ASP.NET and Web Development, that's for the AWD1100 class that'll run in fall. All right. And for some of you, it'll be probably next summer, I would guess, or next fall. And then finally, data storage and processing. That's going to, if you check that one when you install, that should download for you Microsoft's SQL Server database. Okay. After you get done with that, and you can't do that from here, you probably are going to want to go in and Google install SQL Server Management Studio. This is another product. All right. This is sort of Microsoft's answer to PHP-MyAdmin. That's not well put at all, but that's the way I'm going to put it with you. All right. So if you click on that and you click here, you'll notice that there's an article here. So maybe you don't even want to choose that one. You can, because it's down here. Free download of SQL Server Management Studio 19. All right. If you don't want that one, I think you can grab this one, the SQL Server downloads from Microsoft. And I think you can get it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought you could get it from here as well. There. Download SQL Server Management Studio. Now, after you go in and download that, and it's not a small download, it takes a bit of time to do. All right. After you go in and you do that, all right, closing all this stuff that I don't need open anymore, okay? We don't need this anymore either. There we go. All right, there's that's what you see if you look at today's lecture. Okay, let's make sure this is still taping. Yes, it is. Okay. All right. So I've already got SQL Server Management Studio. I've already got it in here, okay? And so if I go out, when you download that, you should get a folder. And then that folder, which is in the Microsoft stuff, the folder should be called Microsoft SQL Server Tools. Yours might not be 18. It doesn't matter. But if you click here, now look, there is Microsoft SQL Servers Management Studio. It's 18. Yours will be 19, but mine's 18. All right. When you open that up, you just click on that like I just showed you, and it comes up like this. All right. Now, I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to do a screenshot of it. All right, probably won't resonate real well in here, but we're going to try it like this anyway. All right, so you can see on here, under the server type, it says Database Engine. All right, it is possible for you to click the down arrow, and there's other ones. The only one we'll ever use in here, to my knowledge, will be Database Engine. The server name should be the same. Your server name should be the exact same as mine. LocalDB in parentheses, MSSQL LocalDB. Now the authentication, right now you'll notice it says Windows Authentication. If I click this down arrow here, one of the ones that it would choose would be SQL Authentication. If I chose that, then what would happen would be this would change, and I would have to put in my own username and my own password to do that. I don't want to do that. All right. This is going to be unique to every machine. So notice that my username is desktop-m1j4bef/jpscott. Doesn't help that you know that. It's just for my machine only. All right, and it's what I've got installed on here. So why am I even taking the time to tell you this? All right, I want to show you that right now. So I'm going to click Connect. And what it's going to show me, amongst other things, is when I go to Databases, all right, and I open up under here, okay, I've already got MMA books right there. But I want to create a new one. I could remove that, but I'm not going to. So I'm going to right mouse click on here, choose New Database, and it asks for a name. All right, and you'll notice as soon as I start typing in here, it'll start filling some stuff in down here. All right. So most of the time, databases end with DB. So I'm going to put in MMA books DB. And you'll notice it filled all that in with this. And it set up some system stuff. But if you look over here, there is no MMA books DB. There is an MMA books, but no with DB in it. So I'm going to click OK. And lo and behold, there's MMA books DB. Now, it is empty right now. I want to repeat that. It is empty right now. Okay? All right. So I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to right mouse click on the database, and I'm going to choose New Query. This brings up what's called the SQL Server query window. Probably right now as close as we get to actually using something like PHP-MyAdmin. All right. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the C drive. All right. And I gave you this at the beginning of the semester, a folder called C# Students. All right. And in there was a folder called Student Download. And in there was a folder called Databases. All right. And I'm going to open up that file. There's 3 files. This is the actual database. We could have tried to just copy it in, but that doesn't always work. This is a log file that's supposed to basically log everything we do against the database. We want this one, the create_database.sql. So I'm going to open that in Notepad. All right. Now, yours is going to have something here that says, like, if that database exists, remove it. Just get rid of those lines. Start it here. But rather than use MMA books, I just changed the name of mine to MMA books DB. DB for database. Okay? So as it says, this script creates the MMA books database on SQL Server. So we'll see whether or not that works. So I'm going to highlight all of it with a Control-A, Control-C. And then I'm going to come over here into my SQL query window and paste it in. And now you don't want to run over here. You want to come over here, and there's an execute button right there. I click execute, and every time it says 1 row affected, what it did was it added a record into the database. Okay, so I think it worked, but we'll check it in a moment. Now, I don't need this query or this file anymore in this program, so I'm going to click the X, and it'll say, do you want to save it? No. All right. Now, if I go back, there's a button here. This is a refresh button. I'm going to click refresh, and now I'm going to click on my database, and then I'm going to click on tables. And you'll notice I have in here 6 tables. DBO, which is, I think, database, I don't remember what the O is for offhand. DBO, I think, is database object. Customers, I've got an invoice line items, I've got an invoices, an order options, a products, and a sales. That may or may not sound familiar to you. If it does not, and that is this database right here. That is this database. We just copied in that database. We've also got all of its records and its schema. So to look, let's just pick out the first one. It's the biggest one anyway. All right. And if we look in here, if I right mouse click, first let's look at columns. Okay. And I'm going to double click on columns. There they are. Now, unfortunately, there's a thing in here called row version that's in this table, and it's in the products table. All right. It's not in any of the other tables, but there's a row version in here and a row version in there. All right. So I'm going to come in to my query window, and the way you can always get there is to right mouse click on the name of the database and choose new query. And I'm going to say alter table, and this one is customers. I don't remember if it's drop or delete, but we're going to try drop column row version. This might be the wrong, it might be delete. I don't know. We'll find out right now. Click over here where it says execute, and it says it worked. All right, I also want to do the same thing to the products table and run that. And again, it worked. Now, if I refresh, what you'll notice is if I go in here to my tables and I go to customers and I go to columns, that row version is not in there anymore. And if I go down to products and I go to columns, that row version is not in there anymore either. All right, so those are all working. But let's go to the customers, right? So here's our customers table. I'm going to close this because I don't need it right now or anymore. I don't need to save that. But I'm going to right mouse click on here and say select top 100 rows. So this command right here, don't worry, I don't know why it gives the errors, but it does. All right, this command results in this. So it is showing all of the records in there, really just the first 100 because that's what we asked for. All right. So when you right mouse click on a table name and you choose select top 100 rows, that's what you get. Now, on the other hand, when you right mouse click on the name of a table and you choose design, it shows you the schema. Now, the way that the schema is set is pretty close to the way that it's set in PHP-MyAdmin. There are differences, all right? But you can see customer ID is a primary key. It's an integer. Now, if we want to do the equivalent of an auto increment, there's nothing like that in here. But if we've got that selected and we go down to where it says identity specification and we click this arrow, you'll notice identity is set to yes, which means it is an auto increment. We're telling it to increment by 1 and begin with 1. So if we wanted to begin with 500, where we identified the seed, we'd put 500 in there. But that's how we can do an auto increment. All right. And as far as the rest of this goes in here, right there, okay, the customer ID is an integer and the primary key. The name, and it's just one field, is a varchar, meaning it's a variable length character field of size 100. The address is a varchar of size 50. The city, a varchar of size 20. So these are all variable length character fields. The state, a char, a fixed length character field of 2. And a zip code, why they put that in there as a char of 15, I have no idea. But we've got all that stuff now. We've got all those tables in there. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to write an application. And what that application is going to do is it's going to allow us basically to come in there and, well, you'll see it in just a second. But we created our folder. We made sure we started a new Visual Studio project. We set everything. All right, in fact, have we even done that? Let's go back to here. So let me do a file, save all. In fact, I don't need to save this. So I can just do a file exit and get out of here. You'll say, wait a minute, you closed your database. Just hold on for a second and you'll see that it's okay. All right, so let's come in here. Let's create a new Visual Studio project. All right, we're going to put it into this thing called SQL Server Tester 2. I'm going to just call everything that. Okay, so new project, Windows form, so SQL Server 2, and we're going to find the folder for this, SQL Server Tester 2. So everything says SQL Server Tester 2. That's fine. I don't care anymore. That's totally fine. All right, and click Create. All right, I'm going to come in here and widen this out quite a bit and make it about like that. All right, and the first thing I'm going to do is what we always do, and that is let's rename our form. So we'll call it FRM Tester. All right, yep, we want the whole thing to be done, so that's now been renamed. Let's click in here. let's change our text. We'll put down SQL Server Tester App. Something like that. Anything like that is fine. Let's also change our background color. And I'm going to make it the green. Okay. All right. So we've got that done. Now let's do whatever the other stuff we want to do in here. All right. What do I mean? Well, now in here, I don't want that open. I want to view, we're going to go back to that in a bit, but I want to view my toolbox. There it is. And I want to find a few things here. The first thing I'm going to find is a data grid view. I can grab it from here, or I can go down to where the data tools are and grab it from in there. It doesn't matter. Now, one thing we're not doing in this class is we're not playing with the smart tag. There's different stuff that you can set in here that we're not looking at. Okay, we may get into that. I don't remember. So let's go into here, and I'm going to move this over and basically set it up about like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so that's my data grid view. Underneath that, I'm going to add a few things. First thing I'm going to add is a text box, and I'll have it take up a good half, and maybe a little more. But I'm also going to make that text box multi-line. All right, this is where I'm going to be able to construct a query. Okay, so we'll leave it like that. Then next, I'm going to add 3 buttons. All right, and 2 labels. And it's a pretty simple interface, really. In fact, this first label that I add, it's going to be put over here. Okay, I'm going to make it the darker color green. So let me click on this. Okay, and I'm going to, like I said, make it the darker green. All right, and I want to set my auto size. Why this is set, I don't know. There we go. Guess it was okay. I want to set the auto size to false. Okay, that's fine. We're going to make it bigger right now. Okay, this is going to be how many records were returned. Okay, and I'm going to make this nice and big. What do I mean? I'm going to change the font size of it to what we have been using. In fact, I'm going to make it a little bigger. 28 bold and Arial. All right, don't worry, because all we want to put in there for now when we start out is the number 0. And I want that to be centered. Okay, then, oops, I wish well, that's okay. Okay, what I want to do next is I want to put another label over here. All right, so I'm going to put another label right next to it. It's going to not have a 0 in it, but we're going to fix that in a moment. Okay, and I'm going to change. I don't want that to be as big as far as the writing goes. So I'm going to change the size of that. So instead of 28, let's make it about 16. And I want that one to say records selected. That's good. There's my interface. Now let's lock it. Okay, and this is all set except I've got to do the names, which we'll do in just a minute. But let's get everything done here. We've changed the name of the form. This is our data grid view. So let's change the name of this. And I'm going to call it DGV database. Call it whatever we want. It doesn't matter. So there's that. This is our text box. This is going to hold our query. So it'll be txt query. All right. This right here, this will be our execute button. We don't really calculate it here. We execute a query. So I'm going to call it btn execute. And I'm going to put the text in there for it as execute. Let's put an ampersand at the beginning of it. Okay. Then for the next one, this second one is going to be our clear button. So it'll be btn clear. And for the text, we'll put C ampersand LEAR. And finally, this is going to be our exit. So it'll be btn exit. And we will put in here for the text E ampersand XIT. Okay. Now, I don't want this to be very big because I might have to put this over multiple lines. So the actual text that's in here, well, 12 is, or 8 rather, is a little too small. So let's make it 12 bold and Arial. That'll fix this. So this is now done. For this, let's see if we can use our regular size that we've been using. So 24 bold, Arial, boom. Okay, that's good. All right. And I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think I've renamed everything, but let's double check. Don't want to do that. Got it. I think I've shown you this already, but if you ever do this accidentally, which I just did, all right, you go up to Tools and you go to Import and Export Settings, Reset All Settings. Says you want to save, you don't. So no, just reset it to the default. Next. Make sure it's set to C# and click Finish. And that should pop back into place then. Never seen it take this long before, so that's not a good. I don't know what's going on with this. Let's see if we kill that. Can we kill this? Jeez Louise. Restart the whole program? Come on. Good gosh. I hope I didn't lose everything I've done. Oh, brother. You are kidding me, right? An error occurred. Could not find the file. Boy, oh boy, I just lost everything I've done. Good golly. All right, you're going to get to watch me do it again. How's that? This was SQL Server 2. Change, copy that name, get rid of this. Put a new folder in here. I'm not happy right now. All right. Let's start up a new project. It'll be new, unfortunately. But I'm going to do this very fast because you just watched me do it. So. Well, the good news is this reset, but that's the only good news. I'll use that color. All right. And I'm going to come in here and again, toolbox. is. Okay, let's change the name of that right away. I think we said DGV database. It's fine. Let's put in our text box. Multi-line fact.txt query, we'll call it. Put in our multi-line. Move this down. In fact, let's do this. We can make this a lot wider. So let's do that so that we're able to put in a query that's a little bigger. There we go. All right, now let's put in our buttons. Let's put in our two labels, in fact, just so we don't get hung up. File, save all. Now it should be saved. Okay, let's put in our two labels. Here's the one. I'm going to call it LBL records selected. In fact, I'm going to call it LBL number of records selected. A long name, but it's fine. All right, I'm going to change the background color of it to make it dark. I'm going to change the foreground color of it to make it white. All right, I'm going to change the size. Let's go to auto size and set it to false. Something about like that. Let's change the font size on this. This one we're going to make nice and big. 28, bold, Arial. That's good. We want it centered. Well, not image align, text align. There we go. Finally, we want one more over here. Fix this in a minute. All right, but this is going to say here, this will be right here, will be LBL. This will be records selected. That's what it's going to say, is records selected. That will be the text in a moment. Okay, and what do we have left then? That is our buttons here. So let's make these 24, bold and Arial, as we've been doing for most of the semester. Okay, let me double check here. Have I renamed everything? Now this is where I screwed it up before. Oops, form. Okay, I have not given my buttons names. So this first one will be btn execute, and it will say execute. Let's put an ampersand before the E. second one will be btn clear. So we'll have C ampersand LEAR, and we will call it btn clear. And the last one will be this one will be btn exit, and it will be E ampersand XIT. Let's lock this into place. Okay, that's done. And I think we renamed that too. Okay, everything's been renamed. All right, let's click on our form. We will set our accept button to btn execute. We will set our cancel button to btn clear. We will set our start position to center screen. Finally, we will click in here again and do a view tab order. And let's set the tab order to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do another view tab order. Make those numbers go away. All right. This will be our execute button that we'll do in just a moment. This will be our clear button, which we'll do in just a moment. This will be our exit button, which we'll do in just a moment. And if we do run this now, it's not going to be, it doesn't work, but is it centered? Yes. It looks okay. All right, that looks like it should be moved over a little, or else this should, but that's all that's left. So let's do that. Okay, that'll work. Let's lock it again. There, that's all done. All right, so let's get the preliminaries out of the way. So here's exit, and we have the old exit program or not. Okay, so we'll put that down here. All right, I'm going to just grab that from an old program. So let's grab that from here. I'm going to grab a bunch of stuff from there in just a second. Okay, so we've got that. And of course, we can test that right away to see if it works. So file, save all, run the program. Says there were errors. Well, that connection is giving us an error. So we'll comment that out. We haven't put that in yet. No, what's wrong? It says I'm missing a semicolon. And that'd be right there. Try it again. All right. Exit, no, exit, yes. Okay, that all works. Now I'm also going to, just because I'm trying to save a little time here, I'm going to go up to this same thing, and I'm going to find the code for the clear button. I called it clear the GUI. And it's not much, it's about 10 lines. So let's go look at that. So for the clear button, again, we'll call clear the GUI. You can call whatever you want, clear all or whatever, like we've been doing. But you really shouldn't put the code in line. So there it is. So what are we doing in here? All right. Well, first of all, we got some errors, but I'm going to fix those right away. Okay. First ones are because this should have been called DGV database. That'll fix 3 of the errors right away. All right, and this was called LBL number of records selected. Okay, so that's done. So what are we doing here? All right. Well, what we want to do basically when we run this and we click clear, right now nothing magical is going to happen. We want this to clear. We want this to clear. We want this to go back to 0, and we want our cursor to go into here. And virtually, that's all we want to do. Now that looks like it's really small, so we want to make that bigger as well. All right, so what value do we have in here right now for the text? I don't know if I might still be at 8. Yep, it is. So let's double that. We'll make it 16, bold, and Arial. All right, now if we run it again, now at least you can read that. And if I take my mouse and I click over here, so I've clicked in my data grid view and I click clear, it clears and there's my cursor. All right, so that's working. So how are we doing this? What are we doing here in this clear routine? Well, I actually went out and Googled and read a bunch of stuff on how to clear a data grid view. And the one I settled on was the one that is at this URL, which is at codeproject.com. All right, you can go out to it if you want to. But basically, this is saying set the data source to null if need be and clear it. This is saying make sure that that label is set to 0. These we've been doing all semester. Clear and set the focus. All right, so we now have all of our code in here for our exit and for our clear. So the only thing that's left, you would think, is, well, just that execute, right? Well, there's actually a little bit more that we want to put into this. I'm going to put it way up here at the top. All right, so let me grab it, and we're going to go over all of it momentarily. All right, that's all of it right here. So I'm going to paste that in. Don't worry, a lot of it is just comments. But I'm going to call from here attempt to execute query. Now, of course, we'll get an error because that hasn't been written yet. And then down below it, we're going to just put in private void attempt to execute query. All right, now that got rid of just about all the errors. I don't know what's wrong in here still, but oh, the semicolon. There. So let's look at all these comments here. You'll notice that I put some documentation into all of these. And I'm going to actually read some of it. Okay? A little bit, I wrote this program first a year ago. So some of the documentation may be a little bit antiquated. It all works. All these links work because I tried them before class. So again, we created a new project, started up Visual Studio. All right. We widened out the screen so we could put in our GUI. We created the GUI that you just saw. We added the exit code. We added the clear code. And now we're looking at some of this database stuff. We worked with a MySQL connection, if you remember, when we were doing the MySQL stuff last week. Well, here, an SQL connection represents a unique session to an SQL Server data source. It's going to be used, as it says, in conjunction with a reader and a command to allow us to connect and do what we want to do. Now, it says for all third-party and other OLEDB supported data sources, use OLEDB connection. So when you're working with SQL Server, you use an SQL connection. If you work with something like another type of database, so we could have done the MySQL more like this, or sometimes you can even do some stuff with spreadsheets and whatever. You'll typically use an OLEDB connection. OLE stands for Object Linking and Embedding. It's an older type of technology. All right, so this will be our connection. It's of type SQL con connection, and it's called con. This will be our query command. This is basically going to represent what we end up putting into the text box. All right, when we put it into the text box and we click execute, what's going to happen is that information is going to go into an SQL data adapter, which, as it says here, is going to act kind of like as a bridge, all right, kind of like as a bridge between C# and SQL Server, all right? And it's going to be called Query Adapter. We could have called it anything. Then we've got a data table, because this query adapter, before we can do anything with it, we basically have to throw the results into a database or a data set, a data table that we're just calling table. All right, so that's what we want to do. Now, hopefully at least, I can now take this con and remove that. Okay, I can close the connection. If I ran it now, I'd get an error because I'm never opening the connection. But that's what we're going to end up doing in this attempt. And there's really not a lot of code that we have to put in here. And I'm being really serious. There's really not a lot of code that we have to put in there. But before we do, all right, before we put in our attempt to execute query, let's put in our code that we had earlier. I don't know where it went, but it went someplace. Oh, it was in the older version before I kind of lost track here. I'm going to double click, and we're going to bring up our form load. All right, so I'm bringing up the form load. Put it there. Okay, so what do we want to do inside of form load? All right, not a whole heck of a lot. But the first thing we want to do is we want to set our connection string. Now this is going to be similar, but not at all identical to what we did for MySQL. Again, this is another way of doing it. Now the system, when I set this up, I'm going to say var constring. Why am I saying var right there? Because it really doesn't map up to any kind of variable that we have. In other words, it's not a string, it's not an int, it's not a decimal. We're letting the system figure out what it is with the word var. And I'm going to put in here an @ sign. And this is going to be a little longer, but it's fine. So I'm going to put in here data source equal, and hopefully you remember this from before. All right, did I copy it in or not? This was our server name. So that is the data source right there, just like that. All right, don't put any spaces in there. It tends to sometimes choke a little on spaces. Then we put a semicolon in, and then I say initial catalog equal, and now we put in the database name, which was MMA books DB, and another semicolon. And then if we want to, and we are going to take advantage of it, we get a little bit of free security that Microsoft puts in by saying integrated security equals SSPI. So all that is that is going to be our connection string. We're getting the green underline right now, and we're getting the green underline because we're not using it. It's not being used in this routine yet. All right, so let's do this. We will now create our SQL connection based on the constring that we've got right up above. So I'm going to say con, notice this is constring, but this is the actual connection. So con equals new SQL connection, and we want to use our constring. And then finally, we want to open the connection. So con.open. All right. Again, we can run the program right now, but it's not going to do anything, I believe at least. So let's do a file save all, and let's run it. I don't think we'll get any errors. All right. We can put stuff in here, but if we click execute, Nothing's going to happen. We can clear it. We can exit. All right. But none of the stuff in here, because we haven't written it yet. And that's what we're going to do now. The good news is there really and truly isn't that much code we have to put in here. I don't know if it's 30, 40, doesn't matter. But we're going to put it in right now. The first thing I want to do is that SQL command. Remember, that's the thing that's going to hold whatever we put in here. All right? We want to make sure there's nothing in there when we start. We want to make sure that we've totally wiped out whatever was in that thing. So I'm going to say here, wipe out database field. Not a great name. I'll just say wipe out the query command. So I'm going to say query command. I'm going to set it equal to null, which means there's nothing at all in there. That's exactly what we want. Next, we have to instantiate, which means create a new query adapter. So query adapter equals new SQL data adapter. So really, I should have written it in as instantiate new SQL data adapter. That'd be a better way of putting this. Okay? All right. Next, we want to also instantiate a new data table. All right? So table equals new data table. All righty. Really, like I said, there's not going to be a lot in here, but the next thing we want to do is it's possible three things are going to happen when we put something in here. Let me rephrase that. Three things are going to happen when we click this execute button. The first thing is, what if there's nothing in there? Well, we want to let the user know that they can't have that be blank. So that's the first thing we want to put in there. We want them to know that. Second, if we put in something that's not a valid query, like if I put my name in there, all right, we want to make sure that's handled. Finally, third, last, all right, last, we want to make sure that if something is put in there that's valid, that the query is run. So that's what we have to do here. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, again, I'm going to do this. Let's put one of those show messages in down at the bottom here. So we've done this before many times. Private void show message. We'll have a string in here that'll be the message. Another string in here that'll be the title. And we'll do a message box.show. And we'll put in our message, followed by our title, followed by our message box buttons, which will just have an OK. And then finally, I don't want information. It's actually going to be if there's an error. Okay, so that's done. All right. So now the next thing I want to do in here is what I just told you, and that is verify that the txt query text box is not empty. Okay, so if txt query.text.trim, if it's equal to nothing, well, we know that it is empty. All right, if that's the case, we know that it's empty. So if that happens, we'll do a show message. All right, and we'll say, I don't know, nothing, not noting, nothing entered, nothing entered into txt query text box. And we'll say here txt query text box empty. Okay? And we could just return there, but let's put the focus back. txt query.focus. We don't have to remove anything because there's nothing there. Now this, hopefully we can test. So let's see. File, save all. Oh, there's nothing in there. Execute. All right. txt query text box empty. Nothing entered into the text box. Boom, we're back there. That's all good. All right. So if we get down to here, what do we know? We know that txt query was not empty. Okay? So what I'm going to do, first of all, is, well, let's put this into a try-catch block. Catch, we'll put in here again, we'll put exception EX, just like we've been doing. Okay? And if for some reason we get to here, we'll do another show message. And we'll just have it, say error in query syntax, something like that. \n/n. And let's add to that then. Let's add to that the system message right there, which I just removed. Come on, get out of there. So ex.message, and we will just put down query syntax error, something like that. Okay? So show message. I don't know why it's giving me an error here, but it is. No overload that takes 3 arguments. That's because that should be a plus. There we go. So we also know that if this happens, there was something in there. So we're going to say txt query.text equals nothing. txt query.focus. And again, we'll just return. Okay? Now, we can't test that yet because we have nothing in our try block. The good news is there's only about 6 lines we have to put in the try block. All right? So, first thing we want to do in here is we want to instantiate a new SQL command object. So query command, because that's what we called it, equals new SQL command. And we're going to run it based off of txt query. So this is what we're saying we want to use for the query. All right. And we want to use our connection. All right. So that's going to end up running whatever we put into the text box. Now we want to use our query adapter variable, which was our data adapter, as a bridge between the program and the database itself. All right, so query adapter equals, query adapter dot select command equals query command. So here is grabbing it. Here is setting it equal to what we want to do. All right. So now the query adapter now holds our result set. So next we want to fill the data table with the output from the query adapter. So query adapter dot fill, we want to fill up the table. This should be query adapter, that's why I'm getting an error. Okay. Next, we want to set the number of records label to the number of records returned. To the number of records returned by the query. So LBL number of records selected dot text equal table dot rows dot count, and since that's an integer, I've got to run a toString on it. We're almost done. Finally, I think we are done. I don't think I missed anything. We'll know in a minute. Let's run it. Go back and take a look when we're done. So File, Save All. Let's just try something simple like select star from customers. I think there's 696 customers, so that's what should show in here. 696, but it's not showing there. Okay, good news and bad news. Now let's see if we can clear if that goes back to 0. And it did. Okay, so I'm missing a line of code, and I know what it is. I didn't set my data grid view. So let's set that right in between these two things. Not between those two. In my try statement, right before my LBL, right here. Because I never set that. So the system is doing what I asked it to do. So set the data source for the DG database grid view, data grid view. So DG database dot data source equal table, just like that. Now let's see what changed from the last time we did this. Again, we'll do another select star from customers. First of all, again, if there's nothing in there, we get our error. That's good. If we put in hello there, which is an invalid query, we get that. There's my message. There's the system's message. And finally, if we do put in something like select star from customers, there's our data. 696 records returned. When I clear, that cleared, and that went back to 0. So let's quickly look through the steps in our try block, and then we'll be done with this. All right. So as it says, we first set up a command object. That is, again, what's going to hold the initial value that we put in the text box. Then we use the query adapter because we're trying to communicate. Again, imagine it's two different languages, French and Spanish. All right, then the query adapter is the translator between the two. So it translates between the C# program and the database itself. All right, so the query adapter now holds our result set. And then we want to fill the table object up with our query adapter. Then we set the data source. You saw what happened for the data source for the data grid view. You saw what happened when we don't set it. We just get no output. And then finally, we set the number of records. So for instance, I believe for products, there's 16 products. So if I select star whoops, that should be a star, from products 16, and there's our 16 products. I can hit escape, boom, it clears. I can select star from, what was it, invoice line items, I think. Invoice line items, I believe. And there's 59 of those. Okay. And I can do it from invoices. And there's 40 of those. Okay. States, and there's 53 of those. And there's 53 because it includes the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. Okay. I think that's just about everything. So again, I will put this thing out there. In fact, I do have it out there. It's a different color. It's got a little different name, but it's basically the same thing. All right. So finally, let's go back in. So let me do another file save all on here. All right. I'm going to quit that. All right. And then finally, let's take a look at these two things. This is the final project, but let's also take a look at the at your electronic portfolio requirements. Okay. All right. Now, in the email that I sent you earlier this afternoon that talked about the fact that I screwed up somehow, okay, it has a link. So earlier this semester, if you do this, so if I go out here, and I don't need that one really anymore. I'm going to leave it out there because I think it's so bad it's funny. But if I go out to youtube.com, and you've seen this multiple times, but I'm going to come out here to YouTube. I don't know what happened there, so let's try it again. youtube.com. Oh, I put a comma at the end. Okay. youtube.com. Enter. There we go. All right. If I do that, and I go out and I search for Jeff Scott Rankin Technical College, and then click on the J there. All right. And I come down and go to playlists and go to the playlist for this class, which is right here. And I look, I think it was around day 30.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Jeff Scott.
And there it was, inheritance and mobilize.
Read that.
So this particular video, which I gave you the link to, has got how to create a how to create an electronic portfolio on Mobilize, and how to go in and use
now to see if it's
or to save it to GitHub pages.
Double check and
all that stuff is in there. All right. So let's take a look at the requirements for each one, and then we'll call it a period here. All right. Like I said, when I did this before, it's now at about 2 hours and 8 minutes. When I did it before, it was about an hour more than this is going to end up being. All right. But I talk slower then, I think. All right. So let's take a look. I can close this now. And I can go over to here. And bring up the requirements. There we go. All right. These are the requirements for your electronic portfolio. Your electronic portfolio is due 2 weeks from Wednesday of this week. Two weeks. I want it by midnight on that night. I want it then, so when I'm grading it, if there's something missing, wrong, etc., I can contact you on Thursday and let you know so you can fix it and get it back into me. Notice it's worth 150 points, so that's 1 1/2 test grades. All right. Now, where it says you must publish this using GitHub pages, that's that URL I just showed you. That's 10 points. So that is, whatever, 1/15 or whatever you want to say of your grade, about 6 to 7%. This says that your site must contain either 5 different pages, if you want to put each thing in a page, or 5 different sections. One that says that's a home or a landing page, one that's an about you, one that's a resume. What many people do is they literally bring up their resume, take a screenshot of it, and then make a link to it. And they do it both in PDF and Word format. One thing I want to mention to you, all right? This is, both for the new people and for the people where this is your second class. Now, this might be the first time you're doing this. This might be the first time that you're actually creating this. All right? You know what? I don't care. It should look professional. I got blasted by a student. I don't want to get into it at all. But the bottom line is, this is supposed to be something you could send out to a potential employer. All right? So it's going to be graded as such. It is supposed to be professional. All right? The about you shouldn't be made up. It shouldn't be garbage text. It should be real stuff about you. The resume should be a real resume. If you're stuck on stuff, go out to resume.io to get going. If you want me to look at your resume, I'd be more than happy to do it. The portfolio work will be either, if this is your first class, if this is the first class you have taken at Rankin, then your portfolio section will include 6 of your programs that you've done this semester. You will take a screenshot of each program. You will take a screenshot, and you will have a link to the GitHub repository. All right? So that's 40 points. So when you look at it, that's 20% right there. So between these two, that's 50, that's 25% right there. Then this is the criteria. This is the rubric for grading this. You must build your project using either a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You can add Bootstrap to it if you want, or you can use Mobirise. All right. Those of you who took the AWD1100 class last semester might be more comfortable doing it in one of these two. If you're brand new, you might be more comfortable doing it here. Each page or section of the portfolio must be similar in style and must be aesthetically pleasing. In other words, don't use colors that are real bland that run into each other. I've had people do that, where they basically have a background that's almost the same color as their text. That's hard to read. You don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. Each page or section must contain meaningful content. Remember, this is the kind of thing you would show a potential employer. Any link that you have on here should work. Any images you have in here should show. There should be no non-working code. And either in the home landing page or in the About You, there should be a professional looking picture of you. Now, I mentioned earlier in the one that has just audio on it that I have a student who graduated a couple years ago, and for his picture, he was in a wedding. So he had a picture of himself in a tux. That's fine. Look professional. However, he was a member of a wedding party, and it had him in there and the other 5 people in the wedding party. That's not what we're looking for. It should just be a picture of you. It should not be an avatar. It should not be a picture of you making a stupid face. All right, if nothing else, just go and take a picture of yourself on your phone or have someone else do it. But it should be professional looking. There's 5 things here. Each one of these collectively is 10 points. So collectively, that's 50 points. So between that and this, that's 100 of the points. Then finally, if this is the first class you've taken, then you should have code and live examples of 6 or more of your programs. What does that mean? Well, let's suppose I wanted to do the program we just did. Okay, so I brought this up. I did that. ran the program, boom, there it is. And I'll come in here and I'll say, select star from customers, and I hit enter. There they are, 696 records. Then I'm going to hit the print screen key on my machine, boom, all right. And after I hit the print screen key, I'm going to go over into Paint, and I'm going to paste that in and do a little bit of editing. So there it is. So that would be one of the links I would put in there. I'd probably fix it up. It looks a little ugly here, but you get the idea. And have it set up so if somebody clicks on it, it'll bring them to the GitHub repository. So if this is your first class that you've taken here, code and live examples from about 6 of your programs. If it's not your first class, if you took the AWD1100 class last semester, then you can have 6 projects here and 6 here, or however you want to set it up. I don't want like 1 project or 2 projects. Let's say a minimum total of 6 and more if you think that makes sense. Again, that is due 2 weeks from Wednesday by midnight. All right. This is your final project. For the final project, you are to create a C# bookstore application. Feel free to call it bookstore. What my hope is if by this weekend I can get everything graded that you all have turned in, and I should mention, if you're turning in work late, send me an email and say, hey, Jeff, I did not do the written test for chapter 8. I've gone back and done it. Please grade it. So if you got a 0 in the grade book, even if you get 5, 5 is better than 0. If you get a 5 out of 10. All right. So this application must work with 3 authors, and 1 author should have 1 to 5 books. 1 to 4 books. 1 author should have 5 to 10 books, and 1 author should have 11 or more books. 3 authors, put them in here in a drop-down list. When you change here, all right, that should change what comes up in here. You'll notice there's pagination there, and we'll talk about that later in the week. Now, Mr. Smith created this. Mr. Smith is a former instructor here, great guy, and terrific, unbelievably knowledgeable. But these should have all been different ISBNs. These should have all been different titles. That's fine if they're all by Poe. Probably the year would have been different every time. And if you click one of the details buttons, it should show you this. All right. So this again is your rubric. Setting up what I told you before with those authors, 12 points out of 200. Using real book information, you can find that online, 6 points. So there's 18 points right there. The author drop-down list should let you filter results by author, 6 points. You should programmatically populate that stuff when the form loads using select and unique functions, 6 points. There should be a search form, which allows you to search by either book name, 5 points, or book ISBN, 5 points. On the search form, it should bring back the 4 types of data that are shown right here. The ISBN, 4 points. The title, 4 points. The author, 4 points. And the year the book was published, 4 points. If there are more than 5 results, as shown here, you should paginate. So if there were 15 results here, 5 per page, this would get you 6 to 10. That would get you 11 to 15. If you say, I don't know how to paginate, we're going to talk about that later this week. and it says use the link skip and take functions. So, well, I don't know those. Well, then look them up. All right. When the details button is clicked for a book, the book details form is displayed. So if I click there on that, display this. In the details form, they should have a picture of the book, the title, the year that it was released or written, the ISBN, and the author. There should also be some kind of a text box in here. All right. So this is just a label. So if I wrote in, this is the best book I ever read, and I click submit, then either on the bottom here or on the top, it would have that review in it. Now look at the end, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 75 and 35. This is 110 page or points out of the 200. You should be allowed to add new reviews using the book details form. There's the form. All right. And that should really go into wherever that's being held, be it a list or something else. All right. The application must implement the book class. So it's got to implement this class right here. And it's got to implement the review class, which is right here. 15 and 15. It implements the search form class, which is here. And it implements the details form that's in here. So setting all those things up as shown is going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 75 points. Finally, for each, you should have a splash screen for the program, and you should set it up with menus. We can look at menus another time. All right, what I hope to be able to do this weekend, like I said, if I have time to get everything graded and I have a little bit of free time, I hope to start writing my copy of the final. And I'll show it to you next week. I don't want yours to be a clone of mine. I want yours to be an extension of you, not of me. All right? The program should have a professional look and feel. Each page, the form should be named, should have a title up on, where you put the form text. Each one, if you've got buttons on it, should have accept buttons, cancel buttons. The start position should be set to center screen for each. The tab order should be set, etc. All right. We may go over this again, like I said, early next week. I don't know. If I do, I'm just going to, the plan right now is the last day I'm going to lecture for this course is going to be Thursday. If I do get a chance to work on this weekend, and I can put mine out there to show you what you should be doing, all right, I'll probably I might even do that over the weekend. We'll see. Now, as always, if you have questions, it is your responsibility to let me know, to email me at jpscott@rankin.edu. If you run into trouble, same thing. If you turn in late work, same thing. Email me and let me know what that work was. I'm sorry if I sound a little agitated. I'm not mad at anybody but myself, because I lectured for 3 hours and 40 minutes this morning, and all you see on there, the only thing you see is a black screen with JS on it, me, and my voice. So that's why I'm redoing this right now, and I'm using Camtasia. So it'll be about 2 hours and 25 minutes. All right. With that said, I will be back tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and when I come back, I will be lecturing on Chapter 20. Chapter 20 tomorrow, Tuesday, Chapter 21, Wednesday, Chapter 22, Thursday. You will not be responsible for anything in 2021, 22. No homework, no labs, no written tests. All right? You are responsible for the written tests 17, 18, and 19, and for the link worksheet, all right, that's due Wednesday now. All right? With that said, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good day.